Welcome to the Catbird Quilts. I'm Kathy Martin, and we're at QuiltCon 2024, and I'm already 100% totally overwhelmed. Excited, and it's noisy, and have already met two really sweet ladies who said they watched the channel. We're about to go to my quilt, which did not win, and that is okay. The winners, congratulations to them in every category. They're beautiful. Your quilts are amazing. I thought I might be like super bummed or like disappointed or sad if I didn't win or place. And honestly, y'all, I'm just so happy to be here. I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I made a quilt. I am thrilled and humbled and pleased that it made the cut, and we're about to walk and see it and see people and hand out goodies. And so here we go. I always forget how bright it is. You're good, come on through. You're not messing anything up, it's totally fine. Like, it's so much brighter than in person than I think it showed on the video. And it makes me happy. Glad I did it. Really glad I did it. And I'm glad it's done. I'm so glad it's over. You know, I really did think I was going to be so sad that if I didn't win, or that I would be so disappointed. And I'm not at all. I'm just happy. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy I have this quilt hanging here. I'm proud of it. I really love it. I can't wait to get it home. So I'm standing at the entrance to the American Patchwork and Quilting Super Scrappy Challenge. And that is the category that I submitted my own quilt into. It did not win. That is okay. I'm not dismayed. I'm just happy to be here. And behind me is the first place winner. It is Illusion by Beth Shuddy. She says, Illusion was made for QuiltCon's Quilting Scrap Challenge. The original design was created on EQ8 using an altered grid. Let's see. There are over 50 different fabrics in this quilt. I half emptied a basket of 1-inch wide strip scraps and used most of my wider strip scrap collection. It was gratifying to use up my scraps on this gorgeous quilt. The quilt is a spiral walking foot quilted on a domestic machine, interspersing straight stitched rows with decorative serpentine stitched rows. So this is Scrappy Manhattan by CLARA Stoikow from Harrison, New York. And so it's obviously Manhattan. This is a Judge's Choice winner. And what she did, she has all this scrappiness, and then she used cord, which she appliqued on, and elastic bands appliqued as motorways and tunnels. She said, I used dark gray fabric for the water, the East River, Hudson River, and Harbor. It was quilted with short running stitches following the outlines of the shore in the direction of the water flow. I am just in like hog heaven. So it's called Scrappy Weather by Nora Bowser. This quilt uses over 50 fabrics left over from an EPP fussy cutting project. The fabric had so many holes that it looked like Swiss cheese. To be able to use as much of the leftover fabric as possible, I had to keep my pieces small. I finally settled on, all right, drum roll, 1-inch HSTs, and the front ended up being just over 10,000 pieces. Guys, so it's machine pieced and hand quilted. So this is the second place winner in the American Patchwork. I guess I don't have to say that, APQ. By the way, if you follow APQ on Instagram, it's All People Quilt, which somehow I didn't know that. Anyway, Multifarious Me by Tara Glastonbury from Kensington, Victoria, Australia. She says, this may be the most me quilt I've ever made, full of scraps, vintage textiles, thrifted sheets, and shirts. And she says, a mix of machine piecing, hand, and a little bit of raw edge applique. Oversized shapes that can be that provide clean lines echoed with the quilting. The only thing I didn't manage to get in was a bit of hand stitching. Maybe on the next one? Ooh, I love it. So you can see it starts here and is a spiral out and then just continues to spiral further and further out in this gorgeous circular pattern. So it echoes the lines of the circles in it and unifies the rest of it with the red quilting thread. So this is Irregular Chain by Daisy Ashahog. I don't know how to say her name. I'm so sorry, Daisy. She is from Nesodden, Viken, Norway, which is why I don't know how to pronounce her name. But she has done this beautiful quilt, which is 3rd place and a judge's choice in the Super Scrappy Quilting Challenge. And so she's done these curved pieces in each block with a contrasting fabric. She said, I remember my mother making blocks with what she called strip sets. I've made many like hers through the years, and there's a meditation in sewing long straight seams, like regular deep breaths in and out. My designs often utilize curves, and I wondered if I could modify that process to make the sets bend with some slight improvisation. I allowed my parameters to shift with each block so that the results could be similar, but not identical. And that's why she named it Irregular Chain. Each block is a vignette exploring color and curve. And I have distinctly different relationships with each print. Some of them I love so much that I hadn't cut into the yardage before this project. Some of them I hated so much that I couldn't imagine them anywhere but sliced into skinny strips. Oh, okay, so this is called Treaded, sorry, put 2 words together. Treaded Mini by Gail Weiss, or Weiss. And she said it was made as a minimalist take on a different quilt I created for the Maximalist exhibit. It has at least 50 different fabrics in this quilt. I've limited myself to using up smaller scraps of fabric and what I had on hand. This makes it a real challenge to find the right colors and work the fabrics so they blend well. Yes, Gail, I had that exact same experience myself. I spent way more time in layout because making fabric decisions than actual sewing. So she says, Treaded. I named the quilt pattern Treaded because it looks like tire tracks to me, and because I often feel run over, both emotionally and physically, as so many of us do. Quilting and working with color has become much needed therapeutic self-care, and I feel like that emotional work really shows in this quilt. It makes me happy. I could not be happier to have this neighboring quilt. This is directly next to my quilt, and I feel like this person knows my heart. This is made from scraps of silk, linen, leather, upcycled denim, and other cottons. This quilt began as an exploration in upcycling and mixing fibers, saving torn jeans and a poplin shirt from the landfill and pairing them with precious silk. Yes, Rada Weaver, a meditation. But the week it was quilted, it was also the week of the Hamas terror attack on Israel and Israel's retaliation, and this image of Jewish mysticism became a meditation for the quilter on her identity as an American Jew. Ooh, just this beautiful combination of fabrics. Wow. It's based on a artist, Avraham Lowenthal, with his permission. So I'm going to be honest with you, I saw some of these on Instagram before they made it here to QuiltCon, and this was one of the ones that I saw. It is Decoloris by Charles Cameron from Wake Forest here in North Carolina. And I got to tell you, gang, I thought this one was going to win. So he got 365 Kona cottons. This is beautiful. And he used metallic thread on the grid around the edge on the same angle as the two pieces that have extended beyond the grid. So this is In Excess by Patty Koppock, C-O-P-P-O-C-K. And she said, oh, a while back, I began to make collections of leftover blocks, discarded sections of quilts, and then I added fabric scraps to use with these. This quilt was being constructed during a difficult time and could be reflected of a bit of inward upheaval. Preach it. I put it away with no idea whether I liked it or not. It was retrieved recently and the circles were added, giving it the resolution I needed to complete it. I like it now much, much better. I think it's absolutely amazing. And I think we can all relate to having some inward upheaval. Certainly from time to time, and maybe all of us after coming through COVID. So this is Sunburst by Holly Gatto from San Francisco. She said she took an amazing abstracts workshop with Julia Graves and learned this quilting technique. It is exploding with color. Yes, it is. It is exploding with color. It reminds me of like a pineapple block, but her use of color and the fact that it's asymmetrical, so it's offset. Each one of these is a square. So she did the piecing together, but the overall take, I never saw the squares until I got up close. Did you notice it? So it's like, it just feels like a sunburst or like you're being pulled into a wormhole or something. But when you look up close, each one of these, so she made this block, and this block, and this block, and then had the vision in advance and then pieced them together. Love it. This is Next Verse, Different Than the First by Cassandra Beaver. So she has another quilt. I think I've already seen one of hers. And she said, how do scraps from one project take on new life? Emergence, the predecessor of this quilt, was created from start to finish in the 100 days leading up to QuiltCon Together in 2021. So her scraps from the QuiltCon Together became this project. So it's hand quilted, and she has done pluses and cross stitches and just straight quilting. And so it's this wonderful, wonderful mix of horizontal and vertical, and then some really amazing details like these cross stitches. There's some, it's tied in certain places. You can see with the little ends still out. There's something about this color palette that is just so riveting, I think, for people right now. The oranges, the purples, pinks, just that punch of color. It's really, really beautifully and skillfully done. This is Evolution by Emmely Treffers from the Netherlands. She talks about we would have no biodiversity without evolution, and how it starts at one single species and becomes a multitude. But it is a beautiful use of fabrics, and she did such an interesting quilting to reinforce what her vision for her piece was. So this is Multitudes by Heather AKERBERG from Omaha, Nebraska. Woo, Omaha, Nebraska. She says, our unique experiences, thoughts, and beliefs all inform who we are at any given moment. We are multitudes. Utilizing simple shapes, this quilt explores how our identities are layered and varied. There is so much piecing in this, the way they come together with the diagonal piecing to that dark purple center, and the circles have similar piecing but in a different color and value. So there's the backdrop of what's happening with the orange and reds and yellows, and then the foreground, or vice versa, of the pinks and purples. It is really visually stunning. So it's not going to surprise you that I love this quilt when I tell you that the fabric came from a reclamation of landfill fabric. So it's Using materials retrieved from a landfill diversion giveaway, this quilt is made from a limited batch of upholstery fabric samples. She says the circular form recalls the target paintings of Jasper Johns. So the title of this is Homage to Jasper Johns by Catherine Wetzel from Chicago. I want to touch this quilt so bad, y'all. I cannot stand it because it has that upholstery fabric that is obviously, if you're going to sit on it, it's going to be either soft or durable or both. And so it is just a really interesting exploration of using those found and rescued materials with a scrappy binding to boot. And she hand quilted this, machine pieced it, improvisational piecing, and hand quilting. I really like this piece a lot. This is Neptune in Aquarius by MAUREEN GARNER from McDonough, Georgia. She said, in 2023, I designed a precision piece pattern Neptune star, but I'm primarily an improv quilter and decided to blow up the 22-inch block to a 40-inch quilt and improv piece it. Each section has analogous color scheme, but some colors carry over from one to the other. This is The Meeting Place by ANDREA BARRETT, and she says she had scraps from 6 months of palettes with 12 colors in each. What would a quilt with all 72 of these colors look like together? A glorious melange where all of them meet and mingle, joined by diagonal and spiral quilting. Given the geometry of the blocks, the final quilt includes 69 of the 72, with the remainder on the back. 3 strips, 2 dark and 1 light or vice versa, were sewn into blocks and then gathered into sets of 4. Each set was sliced at a consistent angle, but at widths that were improvised. I really love this. Y'all, I tend to not like as wide a variety as color that's in this quilt, but man, I really, really enjoy this quilt. All right, this is Joy Map by OCTAVIA Pitts, and she says that it's the culmination of data from June, July, and August of 2023, wherein I intentionally sought and tracked the joyful moments of each day. And then she represented them as 676 shards of sea glass, with the majority of them being unique pieces of fabric. I walked up and was like, oh, it's sea glass. And then it looks like she did almost a sort of pebble quilting. Well, it isn't a sort of, it is pebble quilting around each piece with wavy lines around the outside. There are some really delightful fabrics in this piece. Oh, this is an interesting story. It's called Rosettes by Jessica Plunkett, and she made the award ribbons for QuiltCon 2024. And these are the scraps from the ribbons of the awards. The fabrics represent 12 categories worth of ribbons, while the background is the same fabric as Best in Show. For the design, I wanted to conceptualize the rosettes, which is one of my favorite parts of the ribbons. It's not only an honor to make the award ribbons to capture this specific moment in time, it's fun to have my own quilt to represent my contribution. How cool is that? That's just amazing. This is Scrap Maze by Anthony Bowman. There are 540 scrap fabrics in here, including clothing scraps, hand-dyed fabrics, cross-dyed fabrics, and commercially dyed cottons. It's just this, you know, celebration of all of these fabrics and colors coming together. And it's sashed with this black, very stark black fabric with very narrow straight line quilting. So this is Interplay by Bobbie Gentili, and you may not know this. We know Bobbie as the Geeky Bobbin, and she's the one whose starch recipe that I found online and used for my own spray starch. So, hi Bobbie, thank you for your spray starch recipe, and look at your gorgeous quilt. So she says it's a celebration of color and shape, unusual color pairings create harmony and dissonance, and the weaving of hexagons play with symmetry, while the variations in the strip sets throw the symmetry into tension. And I agree, there's a lot of tension in this piece. This is stuffed CRUMBS by Karen DULING. She says, shot cottons, hand dyes, yarn dyes, linens, and just regular old cotton solids from a variety of fabric manufacturers make an appearance in this quilt. The scraps are stuffed into fabric tubes or strips of oak shot cottons from the United Kingdom. So the oak shot is the in-between, so peach, kind of a gray, purple, pink, that's the oak shot cottons. And then the teeny tiny scraps all stuffed into those in strips. So she took her crumbs, sewed them together, made strips, and then separated them by the oak shot cottons. I really like this because of the color block nature of it. So it's a lot of busyness from the scraps, but it's kind of unified by the color block. And I really like that. I like when scrappy quilts have some sort of cohesive, singular driving force. So we're still in the Super Scrappy Challenge. This is trying to contain chaos. So you know I had to talk about it. It is by Carol Stanley of Oakville, Ontario, Canada. And she said the pandemic was an awful time, but as bad as it was, there was some good that came from it. So she talks about containing the chaos, which I really do think she did visually. So there is a lot of just visual chaos with these fabrics, but they're isolated and yet kind of drawn together with the black, the bold black circles and corner pieces that kind of keep it in check. Okay, so this is Nightlife by LAURICE Earl. And it started, he said, as a celebration of diversity in the San Francisco Bay Area through fabric and colors. He started by making window/building blocks, which you can totally see that. It just looks like windows in a building. And they're really fun to make, is what he said. So when all of a sudden I realized that I had made an entire city's worth, that's when Nightlife was born. I really love quilts where the artist statement, the person says, it was fun to make these. And I think that happiness and fun shows through in the quilt. There's just these huge waving lines of quilting across it. It just looks happy and fun to me. So I'm glad it was fun for the quilter because it's fun for me. So there's another study quilt. So my quilt was called A Study of Mark Rothko in Fabric, and this is a study in scraps, and it absolutely is, by Michael Ross from New Hope, Pennsylvania. He says, I enjoy sewing scraps and give myself time to wind down from a project and find inspiration for the next. Eventually the piles grow in size and I can assemble them into their own piece. When the study was finished, I unexpectedly discovered that I was able to zoom in on many areas to find inspiration for future blocks. It is really just an explosion of color and scraps and the angles. It's just really riveting the way it has come together. I actually don't know how he did the construction on this because I don't really identify a clear block line through it. And that is really even kind of fun, just that you just don't automatically look and go, oh, okay, there's this block, this block, this block. So it's just wonderful explosion of color. It's a study in scraps. That's what it is.